Hello, this is AJ Jones, and I'm your host of the Chocolate Life Podcast. And today we are going to confront and counter some things. And some of these things are talked about in the news quite frequently. Quite frequently. People are just losing their minds. Just, yeah. Um, I just don't know what to say right now because of everything. We're going to confront and counter a lot of things on several dimensions and multi-levels. So last week we talked a little bit about branding, and here's what I mean about branding. So when it comes to like criminal activity, crime, different things happening in the country, if it's done by a black person, whatever crime it is, whoever is the perpetrator or the antagonist in the act, their name and their face are plastered on every digital outlet, news outlet, hard paper published outlet. Like, they spare no expense to put a face to whatever crime was committed. But whenever someone is not melanated, black or brown, you literally have to go look up the picture of said victim to even find out who they look like or to even know what the gender of the person is. And in this country, it just seems like anything that's criminal, anything that's criminal or negative, it just seems like the narrative that's painted has a black face attached to it. Like, black people have been branded as the villains in this country. And it's becoming more and more prevalent with people like Governor Desantis in office, the governor down in Texas, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, our current president, our former president before him. They don't like white people. The guy who's the president right now, I'm not going to say his name. I'm just going to say the president dude. The president dude made his whole career in politics about putting black people behind bars. This dude didn't even want black people on the same bus with his kids when they integrated in the 70s in his good state of Delaware. But yet we're branded as the villains in this country. Oh, the irony. So, okay, let's do some fast tracking records. So we're going to rewind a few months back. So there was a shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. It happened, there was a shooting that took place in Nashville, Tennessee. And in regards to the said shooting, the victim, I'm not the victim, the actual shooter was a former student at the school that they shot up. uh, uh, actual former. Now, here's the killing part about this. Now, as a student, the shooter's name was Aiden Hale. But when it all came out, he was Audrey Hale. And I'm sorry, but like, there's just things that are done that there's just things that are done in journalism that is very, very, very poor nowadays. Everybody wants to be first rather than rather than be right and putting out the correct information. Everybody wants to put the story out first. And so, and also in that, you pretty much had to, you pretty much had to find out what this person looked like. There wasn't necessarily any brand going on, but you had to literally look up pictures of this person. Okay, let's fast forward to a few days ago. There was a shooting in Philadelphia. And we all know about, and everybody's talking about, oh, this shooter was trans. All right, cool. The difference between this shooter and the shooter from Nashville, the shooter was black and trans. But you know what they did? They didn't show the person in their trans form. They showed the shooter in their male form. Because you know why? Now, the way the media has worked from the beginning in branding black people or melanated people as villains, see, if you brand this guy, though, you see, when the shooter as a black male, it's more menacing. It scares the people who watch the news. It scares conservatives and left wingers. Oh, threats. Oh, he's a black shooter. He's a black trans shooter. His picture is planted everywhere. Everybody even knows his name. Kim Brady. Everybody knows his name. Or their name. Everybody knows their name. But yet and still, nobody knew who Audrey Hale was unless they watched the local news out of Nashville. Nobody knew what he looked like. They just knew it's a trans person. But yet and still, it's this person pretty much, it's almost like, okay, he shot one person. It's not that serious. But this black person did the exact same thing. It was vilified and plastered everywhere with no regard for anything. I'm just trying to figure out, how is it two people do the same crime? One person is vilified and the other person is viewed somewhat as a human being. One criminal was vilified, the other one is used as a human being. But the only difference between both of them is skin color. The media has done this for well over 40 years. And the media will show what they look like. If it's just a random killing, it's almost doesn't kill us. But if it's a big killing, like quote unquote the Menendez brothers, when they killed their parents back in the 90s. Oh, their pictures were plastered everywhere. They're also Latino. But what's the young lady's name that what's the young lady's name that young lady's name that drowned her kids in the lake? This lady said a black dude stole her car. This lady said a black dude stole her car. Stole her car, carjacked her, stole her car, knowing two kids were in the back. Susan Smith, back in 1994, this woman told people that a black dude carjacked her with her kids in the back. And then when it was all said and done, she had drowned. She had actually taken the kids. She'd actually taken her kids, drove her car into the lake, and drowned the kids herself. But she's not vilified. She's clearly a murderer, but she hasn't been vilified. But yeah, okay, it's not making sense. So let's move on from the two shooting. But this narrative that black people are villains comes from the policies of people like Ron DeSantis. He's very anti-black, anti-melanin. He's always talking anti-woke. But here's the thing. I get so tired of hearing the term woke and being anti-woke. And woke is the new quote unquote code word for black in politics. That's the new code word for black or urban in politics now, woke. And if you ask any politician, whether they are Republican or Democrat, what the definition of the term woke is, they cannot give you the correct definition. Truth be told, the term woke was started in the 1920s. A lot of people don't know that. And then it kind of faded away and came back up again in the 1960s and 70s. You had people like poet Jill Scott Heron. Hey, stay awake. Don't go to sleep. Please participate. You know what I'm saying? Stay woke, my brother. Basically stay aware of everything. But see, it's people like Ron DeSantis and his policies who are giving regular, just quote unquote white people who follow his every word as if it's gospel and giving them the green light to kill melanated people. Just giving them the green light. And the thing that bothers me the most about this green light is that you get people who are dumb enough, bold enough to do exactly what he's asking people to do. See, everything that he's putting in place in Florida, it is not by accident that he's saying what he's saying and doing what he's doing. You know, the whole and him coming up with this bill pretty much taking away or turning down what African American Studies course, basically trying to rewrite history as he sees fit. That's actually gonna kind of backfire on it because he wants to paint this narrative that he wants to paint a narrative that's really not true. But if you actually sit and think about it, the way the black communities are, not just in Florida, but all over the world, are the way that they are because of people like him and governors and politicians before him put in place. Like well, he doesn't even realize what he's doing. And it's gonna get to a point to where people are gonna start banning books. Especially history. And that's the thing. How is it that everybody that's branded as a villain in this country that's black, you're not allowed to know about your history, even if you've done the research and found it for yourself. Like Ron DeSantis's policies are directly showing us that they don't want they do not want black people to know their family histories within the state of Florida. Not even within the state of Florida, just within this country. And it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad because this man's coming up with everything left and right to come against, black people learning about themselves, and it's this all this different branding with, start even with the branding of black people with crime. Chaplain McKay, how are you? Hello, hello. Uh, well, we'll get to Chaplain McKay in a second, but yes, Governor DeSantis's policies are directly responsible, or indirectly responsible for what happened in Jacksonville. See, what it is, people who are very, very charismatic, well, not even very charismatic, or somewhat charismatic, like a Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis, Ted Cruz, those people. Those are the type of people that will say things and dog whistle people and gas people up to do stuff because, in a weird way, they're literally telling you what they think about you. and at the very, very same time, they don't even want to. They don't have the courage to do what they want to act out in their mind. So what do? They say things to rile people up because there's somebody who's dumb enough and bold enough to do exactly what they're thinking. Hello. That's what's happening right now. Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey. Sorry I'm late.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. You're good. Yeah, I was I was basically getting into the confronting and the countering on different levels of things. I was talking about um the
It's a,
blending and
it's a clicking sound somewhere.
you said clicking sound.
Yeah, well, every time you talk, it's like a clicking sound.
I do not hear it.
Okay, well, I hear it on my end, so maybe it's my stuff.
Okay. Uh,
I
oh
turned
yeah.
the microphone down some to see if it would not click, and I'll just see.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. Um, where was I? Oh yes, I was basically doing like a compare and contrast to the Nashville shooter in comparison to the Philadelphia shooter. And I actually did something on purpose. So earlier today, I looked up the Philadelphia shooter. As soon as Philadelphia shooter popped up, the shooter's picture came up. But when I looked up the Nashville shooter, I had to look for the picture of the shooter for the Nashville shooter.
Are you talking about the Nashville shooter for the school?
Yes.
Well, that's one thing the little uh, Indian American guy that's running for president talked about. Somehow they have made that such an issue about that person not being, in other words, they're trying to use the Christian narrative. However, if they want to use the Christian narrative, then they have to talk about the other transgender person who shot up the place in Colorado. But none of these things are going to fly. These people are horrible, and they are committing anti-black sentiments, and people keep trying to change the subject to anything but killing black people.
Right. And it's almost like that subject is almost taboo outside of the black community. Now
And
we see it.
but that's
We see it.
but that's where we have to push back because I'm still hearing the echo in your. I hear I hear echo. It says echo cancellation. Let me see if I can just hit echo cancellation on this. Okay. It says can't be changed while recording, but I was going to slide the little button over. Go
Mm.
ahead.
Okay, yeah. Um, you were saying we have to push back.
We
On,
do. But we're the only one. Uh, it's about us. I listened to a podcaster today who went back to Moynihan's letter that he wrote to Nixon in 1970. And the whole idea of benign neglect has been instituted for over 50 years. So, welcome to a process that's really has worked on us. And you got people like Sharpton who's continuing to make that happen. Because one thing that got pointed out with the shooting, not only a few days ago, but uh, the uh, the Buffalo shooting, that Al Sharpton did a bait and switch right in the middle of the conversation. He began talking about the black people getting shot, and then he switched over to all lives matter. That seemed like that's their go-to. They want to make sure they try to erase us from the conversation, period. And there in the power structure, because I'm going to talk about power structure. I don't care if it's power structure right, power structure left. It's a power structure. And as we talked about off air a few days ago, the little Asian guy who's running for president worked for George Soros. So now you're talking about a supposedly stark Republican who is all Donald Trump working with George Soros. But that's the same thing that Donald Trump was in bed with the Clintons. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein was both of their friends. So all of these people work together, especially when it comes to working against us. And that's the part we have to stay focused, not the other thing. If Jewish people get shot, I don't care if it's because they write something on the gun. The Jewish people gonna talk about it.
Right.
If not, then that's on them because that's a Jewish issue. You don't hear Jewish people talking about when black people get shot. You don't hear homosexuals talk about when black people get shot. You don't hear Asian people talk about when black people get shot. So why is it that when we continue to get killed in the street, we got to have this almost a tap dance to have these so-called to be black leaders to talk about black issues, about black people who cannot get black laws passed to be protected. So we have to push really hard on people like Kamala Harris, who is not that black person. She is an Asian Jamaican immigrant. That's what she is, regardless of anybody like that or not. She went to an HBCU to get her black papers, kind of like Barack Obama, who married Michelle, to get his blackening. We have to call these things as they are. And I'm just tired of seeing people like the lady that's down there in Jacksonville try to reprimand people to who are grieving and they need to grieve. And she wants to get some type of quick benefits, which probably may just benefit.
Oh, you talking about Councilman JuCoby Pittman, aka Auntie Ruckus?
I don't know. All I know is the lady had on ugly glasses. And she
JuCoby Pittman.
Yeah, but she was very dismissive to the people. I mean, it's a grieving community, and she's talking about quote unquote being respectful to Ron DeSantis. Who is Ron DeSantis? Ron DeSantis has put laws in place to hurt, harm, and kill black people. He has no respect for black people or the history or the contribution. He is very dismissive. He's very disrespectful. So how should anybody respect that kind of entity? I don't care if he holds the office of governor. He should not be respected. He caused these people to get killed. He's the one who allowed Proud Boys and all these other people to come to Florida and then give them these wink and a nod and all these covert signals that you can come down here and you can kill people. So no, I have no apologies for any of these so-called to be black leaders because they're not black leaders. The public, the general public, you and I, and all common people are not represented by these people. Al Sharpton, who said himself, he used to be a snitch, okay? So if he's a government snitch, maybe that's the reason he has his job on MSNBC, because that's the payoff for being a government snitch.
lot of people do not. And another thing, a lot of people don't even know that Al Sharpton did that.
Well, that's why we have to continue to remind people on short podcasts or go get information, because if he was really for community, he probably would not be on MSNBC, because MSNBC has people like Joy Reid, and Joy Reid has nothing for the basic Black person. Anytime they talk about Black people, they try to hijack the conversation before it's over to
take it in another direction.
Well, not just take it in, but they try to pigeon. What the word I'm looking for?
Pigeonhole the narrative.
No, they try to shoehorn. That's the word I'm looking for. They try to shoehorn some other issue into the conversation. One thing that's been going on since the 70s that we need to talk about, you don't have to go all the way back to slavery, go back to the 70s when Patrick Moynihan wrote the letter to Richard Nixon. Everybody needs to read that letter, because this man pretty much, generally we will talk about benign neglect, but we need to be very specific. Benign neglect comes from the people in the late 60s and the 70s deciding, making a conscious decision to make sure they intentionally not address Black people issues ever again. And they will address anybody else. They will put anybody else. That's the shoehorning. That includes white women, Latinos, as they call them. And I would have to go and read the rest of the letter. It's a 10-page letter that was written to Richard Nixon. And I started highlighting some of the points. And his information stated pretty much, the Black people political problem. In other words, we are their political problems. Therefore, they will stop talking about Black people issues. And everybody have decided to get on that bandwagon. I don't really care where they're from. They can be these what do these people call the Black congressional whatever?
The Congressional Black Caucus.
Black talkers, because they're not. They got Black faces, and everybody else benefit from them being in the position of not doing anything for us. Al Sharpton had the audacity to say Joe Biden and his wife were compassionate about our issues. How is Joe Biden compassionate about our issue when Joe Biden posted the laws on the book to help the state to imprison Black men? Joe Biden is much as a racist as Donald Trump. He's just a refined racist. And we have to call Joe Biden for what he is, a senile old racist, just like, what was the man name he worked with? The old Southerners. One of them was Bird from Carolina, and then you got the other guy from Mississippi. Those were his mentors, which means he learned how to be a good racist. But being in Delaware and Pennsylvania, as you just said, talked about the shooting, the guy that went in to shoot up a church, couldn't get in the church, and somehow the police managed not to kill him. Imagine that. The only time police supposedly fear for their lives is when they want to kill Black people. Any other time, they're not fearing for their lives. As I recall, it was down in Florida when these two ratchet little preteen and teenagers who shot at police for over 4 hours. And they let them come out and they weren't dead. They shot at police that long. You know, Florida, where Ron Desantis is the governor.
Yep.
But we have to be, I'd say, multitaskers in our minds. In other words, to handle more than one issue, regardless if it's supposed to be a hot topic issue or not. Because people down in Alabama have gotten in a Black community, have gotten their houses spray painted since the uprising. They have painted nigger on the people's cars. So very hatred and mental illness, as Al Sharpton tried to co-op today. Being a hateful person is not the same as being mentally ill. Hatefulness is a spiritual problem. Mental illness is just that, a mental problem. They're not co-equals. But they're using the mental illness trope so they can get white people a get out of jail free card. Kind of like the qualified immunity to get the police a get out of jail free card. We need to learn all the terminology that the political system use so we can have it at our disposal. Today in Houston, Texas, it was reported in the Houston Chronicle that they are getting rid of libraries. That's why I said we have to be on top of so many issues. And they're turning libraries to detention camps. Imagine that. So now you don't learn from books no more. You go to detention. So we are living on a prison planet. And we're on our own. Melanated people are on our own. If people who are Palestinian happen to help us, bless them. But we should not be looking for them. And in Oklahoma, 2 days ago, it was reported that the superintendent of Tulsa School District doing TikTok, forwarding misinformation, skewing the information rather, and co-signing onto bomb threats. And now they're calling for his dismissal or impeachment or whatever they do in Tulsa. But like I just stated, we have to multitask because we got all of these things coming at us at once. We can't afford to focus on one particular issue because it's not one place or one area that they're trying to destroy us. They're trying to destroy us all over this supposedly country. That's why I'm excited to see the people on the continent start doing their own uprising. Although the media call it coup attempts, according to them, they are putting out corrupt leaders. Do I agree with military taking over everything? Absolutely not. But at the same time, it's not our country.
Right.
So if we don't know all the ins and out of why they put these people out, then why are we saying something when we don't know the ins and outs why Russia and Ukraine is fighting? But somehow that's okay for us to call Vladimir Putin a monster and call the people on the continent monsters. But at the same time, we don't call the Ukraine president a monster who did ratchet stuff to the medical students and the Africans who were in Ukraine simply trying to get education. And the United States not calling out all of the neo-Nazis who's in the Ukraine military. They have a whole unit that's, I think it's called ASOT or ASOT or something like that.
ASOT.
Yeah, they are neo-Nazis. But since Ukraine is the proxy, so the United States can fight Russia, they will continue to feed all the money that they could be helping to, fix the roads, get the people off the streets who are homeless, give the Black people reparation, not give, but pay the debt that they owe. The country need to pay the debt. The federal government need to pay the debt. The states need to pay the debt. I don't really care who pay the debt, but it's the debt that's owed. And we're not backing down.
Right.
So somehow if the Republicans can come together with Joe Biden to allow him to give all of that money to Ukraine and then act like they didn't, then please stop trying to pretend when we say it's time for you to pay up. And nobody says, well, correction. I've never heard anybody in the past year say, where are we going to get the money to finance Ukraine? Have you? Have you heard anybody say that? But every time they talk about reparation, everybody wants to know where they'll get the money from. Same place you got it from to pay, continue to pay to finance wars that most of the armory is going to the black market. Not to the people who are fighting, but to the black market. But anyways.
Just playing the party favors. Playing both sides.
Yes. Well, that's Neely Fuller have taught us quite well. And this man wrote this book in 1972, and this book is still relevant today. Still relevant. Because white supremacy is a spirit, and we must start looking at it like that. It operates through humans, but white supremacy is a spirit. It is a very evil spirit. It operates on hatred and terrorism. And I can go into more details, but right now that's how we're gonna start with terrorism and hatred.
Yeah. And when it comes to this terrorism and hatred, it just seems like any crime that's committed and the person just happens to be black, our face is we're branded as the villain. We're branded as the terrorist. But whenever they do something like, I don't know, take over Washington, D.C., storm the Capitol, that's hatred.
But remember now, that's the money system. And I'm going to go back to Al Sharpton because, he and that female a couple of days ago, they tag team being very disrespectful. I don't know any other word to put there because not only did they disrespect present melanated people right now in this country, they disrespected the legacy of all of the true fighters. Al Sharpton is not a fighter. I don't care how old he is. I don't care how long he's been pretending with his whatever his network is. He's not a civil rights fighter. If you are a person who was a snitch for the United States government, how are you a civil rights fighter? He's not a Martin Luther King. He's not a Malcolm X. He's not a Medgar Evers. He's none of those people. And he disrespected them, especially when he had the audacity to bring in, when he was talking about shooting and gun, and he threaded the needle, started talking about young people who shoot each other in the community. You know the trope, the black on black crime, but nobody ever talks about white on white crime, or the Asian on Asian crime. Remember, there was an Asian just killed, the Asian professor in North Carolina, but nobody says the Asian on Asian crime, or the Latino crime. You know, Uvalde Shooter, they were Latinos. But we have to push back, and we have to push back hard.
Yeah. And I'm starting to notice like a lot of people that are like in my parents' age group and a little bit older. When you start, I've noticed like whenever people like my age are like, you know, kind of correcting them on people like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, and even when John Lewis was alive, and it's almost like blasphemy. Like, no, you can't say that about them.
Yes, we can. We can say what we want. Like people call us the. I sometimes I feel refuse to want to say the N word when they just call us niggers, even from the courtrooms. You got judges who call their children ugly names, but somehow using saying nigger get to be a taboo when everybody calls us that anyways. I don't care what country they from. It seems like every country can find a way to be dismissive and disrespectful to indigenous Black people from this place we call the United States. They got a word, they got a name, and it's a very derogatory name. Never anything nice, because it's when they're talking about us, it's never nice. As the man said in the movie Rwanda, at least you're not a nigger. And I'm going, who put that in there? Because my hunch is that was not part of what was really said when the Hutus and the Tutsis were fighting each other. That's something the director decided to put there to let people on the continent know that you're not a Black African American, as they use the term.
Right.
So even when they so-called be telling true stories about certain things that have happened in the culture, melanated culture, there is still an undercurrent of divisiveness and hatred, and to see at least you're not at the bottom of the caste system. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Which makes really no sense when you're talking to people who are actually killing each other, and you kill almost 1 million people. Or what's 1,000 people? No, it's 1 million people. You kill almost 1 million people in 3 months.
Yeah.
But that's what happens when we continue to play into this white supremacy narrative instead of learning that we all we got. I don't care if we're on the continent or not. And one thing I can say about what I'm watching about the continent, I'm happy they're not fighting each other yet. They're learning how to figure it out, and they're figuring it out.
Yeah.
I'm happy they have elders like P.L. Lumumba, who is trying to put some substance to these conversations and talk to people like Joshua Mpunga, if I'm pronouncing his name right. You got people who are trying to educate the young, because you're talking about young people under 40, and they are a large population of people that William, the future king of England, and Bill Gates were talking about. You have to, in other words, you have to kill the people on the continent to save Europe. So you're hearing that from two of the quote unquote most respected pale skinned people on the planet. Yet and still, they said that in the arena that most of them operate in. And somehow the information got out, and it's not an outrage or an outcry because they think we are their meal ticket for life on this planet. And we have to start saying no.
Okay, if I can for a minute. I'm working on medication for Bernice's reason.
I'm done. So you have anything to add to that?
Well, I mean, I want to say it was about maybe 3, maybe 4 years ago, when different countries within the continent were starting to kick Bill Gates and the Red Cross out of their countries, shortly after that information came out. And so it's almost like from that point to now, it's like people on the continent are slowly becoming more, they're becoming more educated and more aware of what these people are saying or what these people are planning on the continent. And I want to say COVID kind of perked their ears up, and they're like watching everybody who's coming in. And since then, they're like, hey, you and your people got to get out or else.
Well, COVID pretty much pulled the mask off all of these pretenders, all of these facades, and they had the personas saying that, I'm working with people, but that as to say the shadow side, the shadow side let us see specifically the 2 doctors who was it France? Who said they should be, they made a joke out of the fact they wanted to use the whole continent as the guinea pigs for the COVID shot.
Right.
Although they're the ones who dying, not the people on the continent, not in the swamp that the people in Europe was dying. But somehow that's that supremacy mentality that we can use this on them, and then we'll find out how it works and how it doesn't work, and then we can be good.
Yeah. And a lot of people are still very, very unaware that the continent after had less cases than the other continents combined.
Well, but that's why we have to do our own research. We can't wait on your voice, my voice, one voice to do things. We have to start changing our mindset. The only leader we need to look for is the leader within ourselves. So whatever it is we're trying to institute, we should be the first person to try to do it instead of trying to see, well, who can we get to do this? There would be no more Martin Luther Kings. There would be no more Malcolm X. There would be no more John Henry Clarks. Whatever they taught us, we have to put it forward.
Right.
There are not going to be any more Patrice Lumumbas. So whatever he taught, that's what we have to put forward. Because really, that's what Ma'at is about. Ma'at is about we digging within ourselves, being honest with ourselves, and then examining ourselves every day. Not one day a week, not one day a year, not on holidays, not on special days, all of these things that Europeans have created. That's how their culture started when they came out the caves, because They were used to being in darkness. So when they came out, it was a celebration. So yeah, they have these things they call holidays. But my aunt taught people who didn't have to live in caves, you examine yourself daily. Have you done this? Have you, in other words, you do your own self-reflection. And it's daily. And if we did that daily, we won't have to, quote unquote, try to gather on a Sunday or a Saturday or a Friday, whichever days these people call their holy days. We do need a community where we can gather ideas and have celebration, because community is important. But we've been so separated and fragmented. Some of the things that made our communities viable when they were going through the struggles of Jim Crow after the slavery era, we've completely lost that. We just have. Even if I was to go to church now, it's the half of these churches don't even have. They don't have spiritual music. How about that? It's very few. It's very few artists are putting out music that the people who put out music in the 80s and the 90s. And we can say what we want about the old gospel singers or the old choirs. We can say different things about, well, these people were doing this. We've all been doing stuff. But we don't have any music now. We've quote unquote got into these churches and they're not from our culture, and we have blended everything and none of it looks like us anymore. And I'm sorry, Europeans don't have the same kind of music we have. They never have. Our music started from spirituals, which means it came from deep within us, from a place you cannot touch. So you can't compare a spiritual to people saying, I lift my hands. Oh, let's praise Jesus. And you learn that from a hymn book. We're not talking about a hymn book. We're talking about people who made up music because they had creativity. They had struggles. So they're talking about very personal stuff. They ain't talking about something. And really, let me just take this a step. Half of the music that came out of Europe, they created hymns, to teach people how to memorize what they were trying to indoctrinate them, because Europe was an illiterate country, or continent when they started out. If you were not a filthy rich person or part of the elites or the nobles, as they call themselves, you were illiterate. So hymns were developed to teach people how to memorize that idea and that concept that they latched onto, that they call Christianity. Christianity existed long before this person that they created, that they called Jesus. So that's part of the issue of all of these things that we have adopted from Europe, including their hymns. Their hymns are about them learning how to memorize. Same way they talked about how the slave, we had a culture of memory. Well, so did that day. But that's not what they taught Black people to know about European history. And most of their hymns were the Protestants fighting against the Catholics. That's just true. It wasn't about, quote unquote, lifting your hands to some type of savior. It was about how we gonna kill each other. That's what their hymns are about. And really bad mouthing each other. Okay.
That's another new insight.
Well, but that's really learning true history, not the history that somebody has washed and rinsed and presented very sterile to say, we've always been trying to, we brought this over here. No, you did. You've been fighting from Julius Caesar's time until they created famine because there was a mini ice age between the 12th century and the 15th century, and they were still fighting until they created this doctrine that they called the discovery in 12, I think it was 1215. They were still killing each other because that's all they've always done, kill each other. And they killed so many of each other, and they didn't have a workforce, so they had to come somewhere else because they had already destroyed Europe. That's what they're good at, destroying the whole planet. If you notice, nobody's really trying to go to Europe, only until they got desperate that Africans were trying to go to Europe. And then what did Europe do? They made sure they didn't get there, or they treated them bad. Because now they got the upper hand for a moment, but they're still destroying Europe. Climate change. So Europeans are very good at destroying the planet, period. And to have power, they don't care about preserving because they've never had respect for anything but power. That's the premise of the European nature when it came out of the caves. How do I get power? And by the way, European society is from peasant cultures. But you're never going to hear Europeans like that. They were peasants, and they learned how to rob, steal, kill each other, and that's how they began to gain their so-called notoriety and build kingdoms. That's how they came out of the cave. They came out killing, raping each other's families, and forcing them to become part of their whatever they call it. But you're not going to find that in a history book. You must go looking for that history. If you notice, Europeans like to call their history, especially on this continent, they act like they had no existence before they came here. And you have to ask that question. If they were so intact, why is it they don't talk about their history, whereas most people who came across or were taught the slave narrative, these people were forced not to learn to read and write. So they have a reason to be playing catch up. What is the Europeans' reason?
There's levels to this.
Oh, it's so many layers, but we have to settle ourselves, learn to work with each other. So for those of us who have enough resources, and I'm talking about people who have resources that they can give people jobs. Like I said, we have to have on so many hats, because there was a story out today still talking about your subject matter. Some truckers, and I don't even know what state it was in, but some truckers got put out of Denny's. Know that, pass that on. They got put out of Denny's because the waitress decided she didn't want to serve the truckers. Now imagine Black truckers who are moving your cargo across this country, and they cannot get served food in one of these little rat traps you call a diner, because all of this hatred has spewed over and all of this disrespect is being served up on a platter. Imagine that. And they call the police on these truckers Okay? Men who are carrying cargo across this country and they can't get served. We need another green book. Okay? For those of you who may be listening, a green book is where Black people did in the 30s and the 40s to tell Black people where they could and could not stop. And back in that time, we had our own hotels in certain places. So we have a lot to catch up because now we don't have hotels no more. We don't even have little diners because we've allowed all of these things called corporations just to inundate the small businesses. And we much rather work for the slave master, and I'm calling the corporation slave masters, not quote unquote somebody that's on some TV show. Corporations are slave masters. They've always have, they always will be, because that's how this country was started, with corporations. Go back and read your history. Virginia was a company before it was a state. It was a corporation. Hudson Bay was a corporation before it was a part of the Michigan area, or we call it the Great Lake region. Massachusetts, before it became a state, it was a company. So we need to know that we are still in a plantation functioning society because the corporations never went away. They just reorganized. Now we call them Amazon, FedEx, Tesla, Microsoft,
Google,
Boeing, United Airlines. We call them those names. Facebook, Google, Twitter. We call them all of these names because you have these overseers who make sure we are oppressed anytime we try to say something or we get fired. So we have to recognize we still live in a prison planet, but we can free ourselves by learning how to work better with ourselves. And we got enough creativity that we can start creating our own ways to make a living. Especially when the corporations are finding legal ways to fire people. So why not start finding ways so we can make our own hours? We can decide when we're going to work and when we're not going to work. One thing for sure, Black people have never tried to force the wheel on the general people since never. Let me correct that. The melanin mind, because the melanin deficient mind has had melanin in the skin, but started all of this stuff that we see being exhibited. So I must stick to the premise of mindset versus outer complexion. Because if I use outer complexion too much, people will think I'm talking about physical people when I'm not. But that imperialist stuff, that wasn't the Cushites, how about that, or the Nubians. They just wanted to live and, I take care of mine. And even the continent right now, the continent never invaded. Okay, now the Moors ruled, but when they left or when they got kicked out, however, Europeans want to use the history, they never told these Europeans that they couldn't keep their language. Matter of fact, they taught them how to read and take a bath. That's a European concept that you can't, people with melanin can't do certain things. In other words, they become the overseers of your mind, of your total being. So,
yeah, man. Yeah, I think that's all that I have.
well, I mean, point I want to bring home, since you said that maybe all of your questions, or hopefully we covered everything, that it's so much is happening at one time. We really don't have enough space or time just to put all of these issues on the front burner, because
Right.
it will be nice if we can talk about just one thing and that's it, but we can't talk about one thing. It's like the young man who they dismissed the case last week in Mississippi from the two guys who tried to Ahmaud Arbery him, and FedEx fired him. Although most of the people who are reporting, they keep saying the FedEx driver. No, FedEx let him go right before the case was dismissed. They let him go because he filed a lawsuit, and the judge did not say he didn't have enough information. But that's kind of sad in itself that FedEx would not protect their own employee. But FedEx didn't protect a black man. That's what they didn't do. We don't know what they would have done if that had been a white guy, because it wasn't a white guy. But we know what they did for the black guy. They hung him out to dry. He lost his job, and now he is on his own, trying to get his mental status back intact, and trying to, get another way of earning resources and supporting himself. And if he has a family.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, I have one. Okay, I do have one question.
Okay.
Okay. With the in conversation. Okay, with the younger crowd having conversation with older people and being, being told what to do and how to feel by people like Al Sharpton, JuCoby Pittman. How would you instruct younger people to deal with those people?
If they're in the presence of these older people or supposedly representative, you give them as much as respect as they give you. Because if you're not respectful, then you don't get to be respected. It's simple as that. And to make sure, if you plan to challenge them on their statements, have all your information before you. Have your points so you can stay focused, because most of the time, these people are not going to stay focused. They're going to try to pivot. So you have to know what you want to talk about and have not only your confronting points, but have your countering points. And then serve them up whatever it is that you are confronting them on. Remind them of what they said, not just one time, but several times, to show them their own behavior pattern. Because
in other words,
go ahead. Keep what?
I said, in other words, keep the receipts.
Yes. Yes. You have to remind Aaron Sharpton that he stood before the whole country with the George Floyd thing, and he made these statements. He did the same thing with the Tyree Nichols. I'm sick of seeing. It's like, why do they keep getting Al Sharpton? Al Sharpton is not a lawyer. And secondly, why was Kamala Harris there? I would have to put both of them in the same thing. It seemed like it's more of a Democratic PR stunt. That's why it looked to me. But I have to look at also the family. Are the families looking to get 15 minutes of fame? Okay. Because I just thought I'm going to go back to the people who died a few days ago. That lady down there who's supposed to be a city council, and she made that statement about, well, let's get this party started. I'm going, are you serious? So you're talking about people who died, and you talking about getting a party started? You making that kind of statement? How insincere and how disrespectful can you be? These people just died. This is not a party. But if they allow her to say that to them, then she will continue to say that. And the community cannot wait for people online to tell them what to say. Somebody should have been ready to tell her something the moment she said that. It should not have been silence and these people standing there and not giving her pushback. If they want to be mayor with Ron Desantis, that is their right. They live in that state. They don't have to listen to her simply because she is their representative. If I've said it, and I will say it again, if somebody deletes me, I don't need my family talking about forgive, and all. No, I need you to handle business, whatever that looks like. Because I am a nonviolent person and I don't know how to shoot a gun, but I don't want you acting like you don't know how to shoot one, if that is the case that's needed. And I would tell anybody that, because we're at the point, everybody gets to kill us, but somehow we have to continue to be nonviolent. Why? And I know I'm on the internet, so I understand. No, I'm not advocating violence, but I'm asking the question: why does Black people have to be nonviolent when everybody else continue to kill us? How does that even make sense? That's the point I'm making. You're trying to take people right to be angry with people who are telling people that they can kill you. No, I'm not going to. No, I don't think that's right for anybody to sit there and let somebody else tell them how they can feel or what they can say or how. No, Ron DeSantis stand before all kinds of white people and say all kinds of nasty stuff about Black people in coded language. So if you come in my community, and let's just say that Ron DeSantis was on an HBCU campus, my hunch is all the ancestors were turning over in their graves, wanting to know, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You letting this racist wannabe, if he's not, I don't know if he is or he's just like playing that role. Either way, you're letting this man come up on this campus and pretty much stand on the grave of the people who fought. What's her name? Mary McLeod Bethune?
No, that was Edward Waters.
No. Isn't she from that area? No, I'm not talking about the school. I'm just talking about that area. That area. Didn't she open a school in the Florida area? And that's where she's from?
She's from Daytona area, but yeah.
Okay, that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying she was from that was the school. I'm simply saying these ancestors, because these were educated people, they wanted to educate the people in Florida, and they did. Yet and still, you got Ron DeSantis, who is now saying that the only thing that you need to be teaching in Florida is the benefits that Black people learned in slavery. Every Black person was not a slave, Ron DeSantis. Some of us were already over here when even your folks got here, which came here a little bit later than the folks who were already here when the Europeans got here. You know, the Northern Europeans, not the Southern European, Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis folks come from Southern Europe, which they had some nice little slurs for them who are Italian. So we've always seen how Europeans really do hate each other. But when they come over here, they can always stomp on the graves and the heads of the Black people. So all we have to do is just know truth so we can confront everything with truth. We don't have to try to acquiesce like that council or like Ron DeSantis or Kamala Harris, who pretends she's Black and she's not. So we have to remind Black people of this so when we get in front of people, we can stop letting them call Kamala Harris a Black woman, because she's not. I don't care how much melanin in her skin. She is an Asian Jamaican. Now, if she want to just say, I am a melanated person and I come from that experience, I will wait a very long time for her to have that conversation, because that's not her background. That's not her history. So therefore, she can't have this conversation. So yes, that's what I would tell young people. Because we are going to have to confront people like Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton get almost paid over $500,000. Last time I heard somebody talk about his salary, that he get paid a lot of money being on MSNBC. Yet and still, somebody seemed to think that he is talking for us. He's not. He's talking for his paycheck. And we don't pay him. So he's not talking for us. So that's one thing that young Black people have to know. We don't pay you our sharp.
All right. Thank you. That was pretty much the only question I had after everything we talked about. But thank you for coming on. And that's it for this episode of the Chocolate Life Podcast. And until next time, be peaceful and be vigilant, chocolate people.
Give me a call when you get offline.
I will do that.
Okay, bye.